No, we're live.
Good. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Robin, can you please call roll?
Mr. Pahowitz?
Here.
Mr. McNulty?
Here.
Mr. Bellis?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Pierce? Look at that timing.
All right, we're here tonight to discuss a couple cases. The first one is ZON-22-07, which is planned for land. The development located at 2460 East Orange Road in Lewis Center, Ohio. And then we will continue on to zoning application ZON-22-08, which is ECH Pathways at 123 Hyatts Road, Delaware, Ohio. Starting with the first applicant tonight, Robin, do you want to go over the staff report, please?
Sure. So I will briefly go over this. I would say it has not changed radically since the previous hearing. But the applicant is requesting to rezone 5 acres from farm residential to single-family planned residential district to allow for 10 single-family homes. The site is located on the south side of East Orange Road. The proposed development will comply with all single-family planned residential standards with the revised site plan, and no divergences are being requested. In terms of the surrounding area, it is bordered to the north and south by single-family planned residential districts, to the east by FR1, which is owned by the Olentangy School System, and to the west is also single-family planned residential, as well as farm residential 1 properties. In terms of development standards, density and unit count, open space, parking, they all comply with the single-family planned residential district standards. Minimum floor area, the development does comply. A commitment was added after the previous hearing to the development text for a minimum of 2,200 square feet for all new dwellings constructed within the district. In terms of signage, 1 monument sign is being proposed for the entrance to the subdivision, which would comply with all signage standards. Additional changes to the site plan since the previous hearing. Proposed right-of-way for the new road was moved to the east to allow for 135-foot lot depth. A proposed T turnaround in the previous rendition of the site plan was changed to a cul-de-sac design, and a multi-use path was added on the east side of the proposed road, as well as a segment under the power lines for future trail connectivity. Also, Lot 10 encroachment on the south side of the property into the overhead utility easement was removed. Delaware County Regional Planning did recommend conditional approval of this rezoning request, subject to 4 conditions. Those conditions have all been addressed to the satisfaction of Township staff. The Township Operations Department did also have some comments, which also have been addressed with the revised site plan. That concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Robin. Does the applicant wish to briefly go over some of the changes from the last meeting?
Sure. My name is Joe Clace with Plan for Land. I'm here with Aaron Azar as well. Yeah, I don't know if I need to get sworn in.
No, just address,
okay.
Please.
1 South Harrison Street in Ashley, Ohio. Yeah, it was pretty well noted. I appreciate Robin's report. I got through all of our requested changes. A couple things that wanted to note. We did contact the U.S. Post Office about mailbox locations, but we didn't get a definitive answer. So we worded the application in a way that it could permit for community mailboxes off the cul-de-sac, which we determined would be the most appropriate spot in conversations with their office. It gives ample area for turning, and obviously people are going to be attentive to their car if there's a need for a fire truck or other type of vehicle to turn around at that location. So we're open to both those. Additionally, the fire department, I understood most of their concern was around the T turnaround, so I feel like we addressed their comments with the cul-de-sac in compliance with the county's plan. I understand our engineer had previously worked for the Delaware County Engineer's Office and was attempting to work within the confines of what he understood might be permitted down the road, but it was a much easier path to get the cul-de-sac permitted. The other result of moving Lot 10 outside of the power line easement was ensuring ample open space to satisfy the open space requirements as well. So that lot got a little bit smaller. Every lot got a little bit bigger because of the increased depth to 135. But here to answer any questions you might have, and obviously those of the public. I feel like we attempted to address every comment we received last month, so happy to be here and hopefully be able to work with you to get approval. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll turn it over to the board for any questions or comments.
I understand, yeah, you guys heard this while I was on vacation. I'm sorry if I duplicate some stuff. I apologize for that. But normally when we have these, we have lots of houses in here and what these are going to look like. I'm just curious why that's missing out of it.
So we're not a housing developer.
Okay.
This is being created with the idea that my client might be building a few of the homes. What we did lay out was architectural criteria within the deed restrictions and covenants that call for a specific design of home to ensure consistency with the neighborhood. But we are not approaching this as though we have
The developer.
it's not a cookie cutter development, so it'll be custom built homes for each lot.
So they would have to, whoever buys this and decides to build would have to show up here again.
No, as long as they comply with the architectural standards that are laid out in the development text.
Okay.
There is creation of an HOA, so there will be an architectural review by the HOA, which will be controlled by my client through the initial design phase. So they will have architectural control through those covenants.
That's something that you will see, Robin and your staff will see.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So I do have a question about the HOA, and maybe I missed it in here, or maybe it hasn't been determined yet. But what is the timeline of the turnover on that, and how is that going to work as the neighborhood gets built out? You know, is the HOA management company going to be overseeing that until there's enough residents there to vote in 3 people, or?
Yeah, correct. It'd be maintained by the developer until such time as it gets turned over. We haven't got through too much of the details of that, but traditionally it'd be 80% or so. He does plan to live there and retain a lot, so the thought process would be it'd probably be short of 100% turnover because he's going to retain one, but those are details we'll be working out as part of the probably working with legal counsel as we move through the platting process.
Okay.
Do you have a single buyer for this whole thing, or are you looking for individual buyers for each of the lots?
Individual buyers.
Okay, so I had a few comments, partly I guess for the applicant and partly for Robin. One is usually when you get an application like this, we get letters from service providers in terms of feasibility. There's some, but they're not all there. So I don't know how Robin feels about that, or usually at least they're there by the time it goes to the trustees, so we know it's a viable development. So that's one thing I noted. Two, I saw that you had changed the turnaround with the cul-de-sac. I'm assuming the fire department has looked at that, reviewed it, and has okayed it. Usually we get a letter from them also okaying the development. And then my third point was the monument side. Usually we get like a size and a location. You have a picture, so we know what it's going to look like, but the picture doesn't have any size, and we don't have any location, like how far it is away from the setback or anything like that. We just sort of generically said it will follow the zoning code. If Robin is okay with doing that, normally we want to know where that sign's going to go and how big it is to make sure it follows the code before we approve the application, as opposed to having the zoning department have to be the bad guy. So I don't know if, Robin, you want to answer these first and then have Mr.
Joe, I'll go ahead and let you address these.
Okay, that was
So we did approach service providers as part of the initial application. The sanitary office provided an email, I believe it was included in. There's existing service that they're going to be subject to review, but we do have Delco. Delco also provided a review as part of the site review process. So I felt like those were adequately addressed. Electric company and gas, and those will be consulted through the engineering process. It's typically, I hate to say it, but when I request those service letters, they come back within minutes, and it's usually you're within our service area. And so I didn't belabor those as far as something to bring to you tonight or in preparation for tonight. The sign, we did put dimensions on there, and I'll say the only reason I didn't nail down a specific location was I was a little bit hesitant because of easements. When we go through final engineering, it's a very tight front lot. The interest would be to, obviously, we're going to stay outside of those setback areas, but we may have to move it according to where other amenities go. So I was trying to be cute. I just ultimately want a little flexibility on that front lot as far as where the sign goes. It'll be oriented toward the intersection or the road, so it's not likely that there'll be a substantial alteration in the layout. But it will fit on that lot, and we felt like we wanted a little bit of design flexibility as we go through the engineering process.
Okay, so that makes sense. If you don't know what the setback is, it's kind of hard to figure out where your sign is going to go and what size it's going to be. Robin's okay with that.
I am okay with it, and there are some stipulations in the development text. It will comply with the signage section of the Orange Township zoning resolution, and I understand that the applicant wants some flexibility, and that is acceptable to staff.
I'm assuming all the requirements have been met, Delaware County Water, and of course fire, and
Yeah, so
engineering. I mean, all that's been signed off and is done. We're not waiting on anything for this, right?
so the fire department has not given full approval. I believe the applicant has not submitted, hand-drawn plans, but I believe they're generally they have seen the development and they are conceptually okay with it. They have not given their full approval just because nothing has been formally submitted.
Just to talk about process, we'll initiate the preliminary subdivision process post zoning approval, and part of that will be submission of full engineering plans, which is the level of detail. If you saw their comments the last time, curve radius was probably the easiest one for us to address, but I think they're looking for a lot more of the particulars that are going to come post zoning approval.
And so they're okay with the 10 houses on a basically turnaround cul-de-sac?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I
Yeah.
assumed it was under their requirements for how many units you can have before you have to have an additional access.
Yeah, it's my understanding the fire code stipulates 1,500 foot, and we're well under that. That's being laid out.
Robin, are there any other requirements that you think are up in the air that you don't feel comfortable with this, or you think all this? You know how this works.
Yeah.
You think all this is going to be straightforward and
I would say I am comfortable with the application as it currently is. Yes.
okay.
Those are my questions. Like I said, service letters, fire department, and signage. And if Robin's okay, that they have satisfied that criteria. Yeah. And again, no variances, which is that divergence or whatever that I asked for in the first place. So I can't see any reason why.
Okay.
I have one last comment. I know coming out of the last meeting, there was a lot of public comment around the dead trees that would prevent privacy, both behind the houses being built and in front of them. Has there been any consideration to any type of landscaping to provide privacy?
Yeah, not quite sure what the grading is going to be required for the site. So the goal is to retain everything that's living, but obviously the interest is to infill and plant as we can. I'm not 100% sure the grading though. So
Okay.
we did not submit a full landscape plan for that reason. I do think the entrance from an aesthetic standpoint, you saw the quality of the sign that we're looking to create at the entrance to the development. The idea of landscaping that's going to help curb appeal from a marketing standpoint and a neighborhood standpoint. So we want to maybe focus low level, high intensity landscaping at the entrance is at least my vision after our conversations. But once we have an engineering plan complete, I think we'll talk further about what we can do to infill. It's not just the neighbors' interest to create privacy, but also ours. So we talked about trying to save every tree. It's just not 100% practical with what's being done.
Thank you.
On that same note, on the street, are there going to be, is there any consideration of any street trees that would be at each lot or every other lot or something like that along that?
We didn't make commitments with what was there, but I think the interest would be to come up with something that's more of a uniform look off of the street. I think the aesthetics of trying to provide a street tree for every house may be a good goal, but we haven't nailed down any plans with that yet. I do know we have to keep them outside the right of way, and there's some substantial easements behind there. So I think we're probably looking at being closer to the house. I am happy that we were able to eliminate the sidewalk in their front yard, because I think that'll provide more ample landscaping opportunities in the front yard of these homes. The trail being on the east side of the road, I think creates more of a pleasant aesthetic to the front of the homes versus having that sidewalk that was there the last meeting. Regional planning just said that we had to have one side, and since the request was to have the 10-foot trail, it seemed to be a better suited alternative to what we were doing in the front yard of these lots.
Any other questions from the board? All right, at this time we'll open it up to public comment. If you wish to speak tonight, please state your name and address, of course, stating your comments. And I will ask that we keep the comments to the merit of the case and try to limit your time to 3 minutes. Do you have anybody that wants to speak tonight?
I didn't see your concerns. I didn't see, but I certainly looked through the information what I had, and these gentlemen also showed up for a preliminary, so I was aware of what was already in here.
So there's no notes of everyone's. So that we all do have the letters. There were letters written. We have those now. The meeting minutes, if you will, have not been dispersed to everybody at this time. It takes a little bit of time to get those compiled, but
The general rule of thumb is the meeting minutes or whatever you want to call it, transcript. We try to have it prepared by the time that the trustees hear the meeting, so the trustees are aware of not only the board's comments on the project, but also the community's comments on the project. So that's another reason why we have you enunciate and speak loudly. So we have that both in recorded format and then transcribed as a summary of key points.
any other comments? Okay. Anything further from the board before we take a vote? Okay. Can I get a recommendation for approval of the zoning application ZON-22-07 Plan for Land LLC? No. I don't think we have to do that anymore.
Sorry,
We don't have to read the whole.
No.
And a second?
Second,
Mr. Powitz,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bellis,
yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yeah.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will move on to rezoning application ZON-22-08, ECH Pathways LLC at 123 Heights Road in Delaware, Ohio. Robin, do you wish to go over the staff report for us, please?
This is an application for an amendment to the currently effective zoning development plan approved under 2 previous applications to increase permitted uses for community events and additional parking for property located at 123 Hyatt's Road. To the north and south, the property is bordered by planned commercial districts and farm residential districts. To the east, on the other side of the street, is a mixed-use multifamily development that went in under the Route 23 corridor overlay district. And to the west is farm residential property and also the border of Liberty Township. A brief summary of the applicant's rezoning request. Additional permitted uses have been requested for special events held both indoors and outdoors. I will not read the full list as it is rather lengthy. Language has been added, which states that events will end by 10:30 p.m. With cleanup to follow. And occasional overnight accommodations for attendees of special events for up to 5 or 6 people is requested. Language has been added to the development text since the previous hearing that clarifies that overnight accommodations will be limited to event guests only. In terms of parking, the applicant has provided a letter from the Delaware County Engineer's Office in relation to the parking lot for a parcel located on US 23 as requested by the Zoning Commission at the previous hearing. A divergence has been requested, which was not requested at the previous hearing, but has now been requested from Section 21.01D of the Orange Township zoning resolution to allow off-site parking or parking that is not on the parcel with the principal use. For signage, the applicant is requesting a divergence to allow for an entrance sign to be placed less than 15 feet from the right-of-way of Hyatt's Road. In the version which you were sent out digitally, that request was 2 feet from the Hyatt's Road right-of-way. The applicant has revised that request as of this afternoon. Their request is now for an entrance sign to be placed 6 feet from the Hyatt's Road right-of-way. So again, there are a total of 2 divergences requested, 1 divergence to allow off-site parking, and 1 divergence to allow a sign to be located less than 15 feet from the right-of-way. I would add that in terms of myself, I think there are two tricky points in the development text and the language itself. One for overnight events, and one for the off-site parking. I believe the language in the development text as it stands is good enough for me. I am satisfied with it. I think we would like to have Orange Township Legal Counsel review it before it goes to the trustees. So if you choose to approve this application tonight, I have included a stipulation in that resolution, which will just encourages the applicant to continue to work with Orange Township staff to hammer out the precise details of that language, which I am sure they will be. The applicant has been accommodating thus far. I have nothing further.
Okay, thanks, Robin. Does the applicant wish to add anything to the staff report, comments, or kind of go over some of the changes from the last meeting?
Well, Robin, I'm Nancy Krieger. I'm representing the applicant in this for Steve Martin. Robin has done a great job and it's been wonderful working with him. We tried to address all the concerns from the last meeting, being the Delaware County Engineer's Office letter, the map of the parking layout that would be there on just over the passage, the pedestrian pathway that goes over to that parking lot, and the signage divergence. We have Steve Moore here who's going to do a presentation to show you how that works. The sign divergence, what I would add is that because of the Hyatt's Road realignment, a great deal of the frontage of the property was taken. So it makes it difficult to get the sight lines for safety. But I'm going to let Steve do the presentation as far as the signage goes, and then I can address any other questions that you may have. And he'll pass around a rendering that shows the sign in its position as you would see it when you're driving down.
And then Steve, if you can give your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Steve Moore. I'm with Moore Signs. We're in Westerville, Ohio. And my address for the company is 6060 Westerville Road, Westerville.
Thank you.
Great. As Nancy said, there was 9 feet of frontage taken in the right-of-way take for the rebuild of Hyatt's Road, and you all know how long that took to get done. I don't know if you guys could see it when you saw it on your computers, but there are 3 lines in that bottom photograph showing the right-of-way, and the green one is the 6-foot setback divergence that we're asking for, and then the yellow one is where the 15-foot setback would be, and you can see how far back into the foliage that's left from the rebuild, but where the sign, well, that would be the leading edge of the sign if we were to try and meet code. I wasn't able to do this until I confirmed with the, Nancy helped me confirm with the county engineer what I could use to measure and show exactly where that line was, until we finally got a confirmation from him late last night. So this morning I measured it and confirmed all those lines. And then just before I left, I thought of another drawing that I could do, and I placed the sign in the location we want to do, and it's not something I was able to get to Robin digitally, so I've got a copy of it. I printed.
These views are of Hyatt's Road, correct?
Yeah, that's all. That's Hyatt's Road.
Hyatt's Road looking west.
Yeah, one's looking east and one's looking west. The one on the bottom is looking east towards 23.
Okay.
The one top left is looking west, and then the top right one is again looking 23. I used my truck to show where that right-of-way line would run, so you see how far up the right-of-way line is from the truck, being able to see through. And the green line shows the 6-foot setback. We first thought we couldn't think of a number. I said let's work with 2 until we get that confirmation from the engineer, and that's what we got to. We were able to get to Robin later on in our work. We're leaning towards that design. One of the things I thought of, leaving the column, instead of a dual column sign, we'll leave a single column sign with a lower column in the front, just to get the column out of the way to help the view of pulling out. I had plenty of room to pull out with my truck, and it's a big vehicle, so I think everybody will be able to pull out just fine when they want to try and get out. Plenty of room there between the edge of the pavement and that 6-foot setback. The stone, there was a lot of stone that was taken, was asked to be removed by the county when they redid the road, and I don't know if Deb had the foresight to keep it for this, but it works well. We're going to try and use all the original stone, so the stone for the columns of the sign will match the stone that's on the columns for the gate that's behind it. I think that's, unless you have any questions for me, if you had any questions.
Can you pull up that picture or the rendering? Yeah, right there. So that's changed obviously because
Yeah, that was. I just did 2 renderings over the weekend and wanted to get them to Deb, and
yeah.
I thought, well, one way and one the other way, and tried to keep with the theme of the woodsy look by adding a beam maybe with a dual column.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the more I looked at everything, I leaned towards the one with the single column, and Deb agreed that she liked that one better anyways.
Yeah, okay. Now that that's clear, I definitely like the one that's in this rendering here.
Yeah.
That has the one column.
You can imagine that column.
Yeah, as you mentioned,
Looks great.
visibility wise,
Right, rising up.
opposed to this design that we're looking at
Yeah.
up on the screen.
Yeah.
It's a much better design here.
So my only question is, and Robin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Do we still require a solid base under our signs for our zoning regulation?
That is a question that I do not know the answer to.
Okay, because in the past, we have asked that, and Dennis, you know what I'm talking about.
Monument signs.
That
Yes.
monument signs are required to have like a solid,
You mean masonry all the way across?
on a base, yeah, so
Okay.
it doesn't look like they're just sort of temporary signs,
Yeah.
but they're actually monument
Yeah,
signs.
yeah.
So that's why I'm asking Robin if that's still in the zoning code, in which case you would have to slightly modify your
Yeah.
sign to continue the stone across on the
Yeah.
base, or continue something to give it a base,
I don't
per our
remember
zoning
seeing
code.
that. I don't-
So work with Robin,
Yeah,
to make sure, and the other thing, I like the way it looks, but, it's hard to tell scale-wise since there's no dimensions on it. So if you could,
the panel in that sign, and if you saw the other ones, is 30 inches high by 72 inches wide,
okay,
and that's 15 square feet, which would be meeting code at 15-foot setback. So that's why we wanted to stay with that, so that we weren't. Technically, we'd be asking for 2 divergences if I made that more than 15, because we're going forward. Usually you can get more when you go back, but do you lose square footage as you go forward? So kind of one way it might be a divergence, the other it's not. So we agreed at 15, and that's why I did that drawing, because I hadn't been able to show Deb, hey, is 15 okay at that? Do you think that's going to work for you? I wanted her to see that before we said we're not going to ask for any divergence of square footage, because I think it works, and Debbie agrees that it works. And I will say that, and I told Debbie that when I came in, I went right past the place today.
well, that was, I understand the need for
Yeah.
signage, because, due to its location,
Yeah,
it is quite easy to
yeah,
drive right on by, and it's difficult to have an event center if no one can find it.
yeah.
So I'm
One thing I
willing
didn't,
to be flexible, but I just don't want to throw out the
Right.
whole code and write a
Right,
blank
right,
check. So that's why I want a little, dimensions, an idea of
Yeah,
the location.
yeah,
So it's not a blank check.
yeah, that's kind of why I get that, and that's why I came back and did that drawing so everybody could see. You can get a feel for how big it is, like relationship to the guardrail and the width of the driveway, and I hope that would help. And I know how some people like to see the numbers, some people like to see the visual, so I hope that the numbers help you with that.
And I like both, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually need both.
Yeah,
We need to know if you're gonna ask for divergences, especially for size.
right.
Just clearing that up and say, yes, that meets the code, that goes
Yeah,
a
yeah,
long
we're-
way.
So
We're there
it's
with
not
that.
a blank check, but it's
Right.
getting a divergence for X, Y,
Right.
and Z,
Right.
and that's it.
Yeah, and all those details will be fully, it'll be fully detailed drawing when we go to Robin for permitting or anything. And I'll add them in if there's anything else.
I would like to
Mhm.
have them, I guess, when it goes to the trustees.
Yeah.
If that's,
There's yeah,
that's,
just,
if not, it's very difficult for them to make
yeah.
a decision.
It was just a hesitation on my part to make sure that Deb was okay with that square footage and not want to come and ask for something different. I want to make sure I point out also that I'm big on address numbers, so we're going to add the address numbers to the masonry part of the sign,
Okay, that's fine.
because I think it's necessary. We just haven't figured out. I mean, again, when we nail down the complete design, we'll find the best place to put the numbers.
I mean, me personally, I'm okay with where it sits. I'd hate to just cut down a bunch of trees, which is what you guys would have to do to
Yeah.
put that 15-foot back.
Remove your fence.
Remove
Yeah,
the
some
fence.
of
I mean,
the
just
sections
for
of the fence had to be moved
sign,
back too.
yeah. And I mean, you said it's 7 feet rather than 15, right? Is that
6 feet back from right away
6.
rather than 15 at the leading edge of the column. So, well, in that design, the leading edge of the column and the sign panel are the same, one and the same. And if we were to do, I suppose if we were to do a masonry base all the way across that, the stone cap would carry all the way back from the front into the, butt into the
Exactly.
rise of the
You
other
would have
column.
a column and a
Right,
base
right,
going all the way across.
yeah,
And then you can figure out where you wanted to put your rest,
Yeah.
on the base or on the column, and then
yeah.
do the base just better.
Mhm. There's only 3 numbers, so it could have to make sure it doesn't get lost because there's only 3 numbers. So, yeah.
Do you have this logo, these colors on other documentation and things that you print out and send to people, brochures?
Debbie was good enough to give me they have a designer working on that logo for the website. I think it's probably pretty much complete, but that color design, that color combination, the 2 blues and the white, I'm just going to use an off-white, so it's not a really stark bright white. Just use a mellow, maybe even a blue tint to the background, so it carries a cool color for the background rather than a warm color.
I think that's a tremendous idea because I think as most of us look for signs, we look for logos. We
Yeah,
look for logos, we look for colors.
yeah,
Before you ever read and see what it is.
right.
You intend to light this sign even with?
We would like to use some ground lighting. I think there's light or electric there. Is there not? We found electric. There's electric there, so we'd probably use some real low Kelvin ground lighting.
Because I know there's code for that. And
Yeah,
Correct.
If
Yeah,
if you're within the code for that,
yeah,
we're good. That's what we're here, is that you're not asking for divergences for sign, for size, for lighting.
yeah,
That's what we're trying to make sure of here.
yeah. The only divergence is the setback from right of way.
Okay, I agree with, I think that makes some sense, unfortunately.
In this location, I would
Yes.
just want to nail down the design before it goes to the trustees, so
Okay.
I guess, Robin, if that can be added to your stipulation list. I don't know how other board members feel about it, but I would be more comfortable if we have a better idea of, size, location, lighting, all that stuff. Before it goes to the trustees, so it's not a blank check.
We'll probably come up with a better site plan and have dimensions on the site plan from the driveway, from all the dimensions of where exactly it's going to be. There's already landscaping there, so it's a perfect dimension front to back from the street, wide enough, just the right width for it to fit. So it's the landscape, the plot or the place we want to put it is pretty much level. It does drop a little bit as it goes farther back, but it's already landscaped. We just rearrange the landscaping and redo it. You can see in that little bit where some of the landscape already exists.
So you're saying you're not opposed to continuing that base across?
I think there's enough stone to do that. We might have to get creative with how we use it. Maybe fill in the back of it where you can't see it if we don't have enough stone. But I've contacted a mason, but he hasn't looked at how much stone there is, and I really haven't even given him a drawing yet because we weren't sure what we were going to do when I talked to him. So we'll give him the drawing and find out if there's enough stone to do what we want to do, or if we can find something to match it. There may be something creative I can do with, we don't have enough stone, keep the 2-column look, and then have a filler in between that might be, just so it does flow all the way across.
And so I would add the language in the zoning resolution states that monument-style freestanding signs are defined as signs directly supported by and affixed directly to a base having a width at least equal to that of the sign, with no intervening openings, supporting posts, poles, pillars, uprights, or braces. So unless a divergence is requested from that, that would be a requirement.
Okay. Yeah,
That has a solid base.
we'll work on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, as long as you can get the sign tied down. I understand the need because of the location. I don't have a problem with the off-site parking Divergence because it's like overflow parking for an event. That's not uncommon for an event place. And it's actually, you know, it's like contiguous to your, I'm not quite sure how I want to terminology I want to use, but it's not that far away. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm glad you added the language about the loud music stopping at a certain time, and that overnight guests will be limited to event guests, that it's not like a Airbnb or anything. So I'm content as long as you have like a stipulation for the sign.
You're still intended on using that parking lot in the driveway up there towards 23, is that right? Yeah.
Have you walked it?
No,
It's beautiful back here. It's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you did provide the DO or county engineer's letter concerning the access, and you provided the site plan, which was very helpful because for some reason I thought you might be using like all the parking, and when I saw that it was just limited to, you know, less than a quarter of the site, much more comfortable with traffic going in and out on that access.
All right, any other comments from the board? Okay, can I get a recommendation for approval of zoning application ZON-22-08 ECH Pathways LLC with modifications?
So moved.
Mr. Powens,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bells,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yeah.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I assume Robin will figure out the exact language for the signage.
Yeah, I think that will be a requirement also. We'll work on some signage.
Yeah, so, or since the township attorney is looking at the other stuff, maybe they can wordsmith it, but
Yeah.
I feel much more comfortable. Thank you.
Noted.
All right, anything else, Robin, for on minutes or anything? Right?
We have no minutes for your approval. We do not have a meeting scheduled for the first part of August, so I believe our next meeting date is Tuesday, August 23rd. So you won't get a few weeks off.
No. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned. What, Robin?